not just changing the government, he is uprooting the whole system of neocolonial domination.
This man said something no one expected.
He's not just changing the government, he is uprooting the whole system of neocolonial domination.
This man said something no one expected, that Ibrahim Traore is the moment Africa broke the spell. He exposed the truth, that Traore isn't rising because of religion, rebellion, or noise, but because he finally understood the full blueprint of African freedom. And that truth, it terrified the West. Now they're after the man who said it. But what exactly did he reveal? Let's find out.
Let's find out. Let's find out indeed. All over the world, dear people, all my viewers, you are all welcome to YA Think Show. We bring you the current update that is coming live from Burkina Faso. And please, if today be your first time, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Please stay tuned as we bring you all the details.
World map. You'll see borders shift, governments fall, economies collapse and rebuild. Change is constant. But when it comes to Africa, change isn't just resisted, it's forbidden. This was the first thing the speaker hinted at. Africa isn't lagging, it's being held behind.
Not just Africa, of course, all across the global south. But nowhere is this more the case than in Africa. You understand? I pointed out before, more than once, relationships between countries, between continents, evolve and develop and change over time. We've seen drastic changes in international relationships in just the last 20 years. In fact, we've seen drastic changes in just the last 4 or 5 years. You know, even the last 100 days, to be honest. But the West's relationship with Africa has remained essentially the same for 1,000 years. Subjugation and extraction, looting and pillage. So for Lumumba or Nkrumah, it was the 1960s, but for the West, it was still the 1860s, the 1760s, the 1660s. For the West, Africa was frozen in time, and they kept it frozen in time by force. They kept it frozen in time by violence, by assassination, by coups, by invasions, and by hostage governments and collaborators. They kept it frozen in time by predatory lending, by neoliberal policy coercion, by manufactured debt and abusive trade policies. You know, when they can't send soldiers, they send consultants. So all those great leaders weren't ahead of their time. The West stopped time in Africa. And understand this, when you arrest the forward movement of a people, when you stop them in time like that, you're not just stealing their wealth.
The term he used, frozen in time, wasn't poetic exaggeration. It was forensic. It describes how the systems that once enslaved Africa haven't disappeared. They've just gone digital, financial, and diplomatic. The chains were replaced with contracts. The whips were replaced by sanctions. The boots were replaced by advisors. And still, African nations are told what they can own, who they can buy from, which friends they're allowed to have, and what's acceptable foreign policy. Even aid comes with a script, written in Paris, edited in Brussels, signed in Washington. Every deal has a leash. Every loan has a trapdoor. This is what the man meant when he said, they've stopped time in Africa. Because the world moved on, from empire to partnership, from control to cooperation. But not with Africa. No matter how the global system evolves, when it sees Africa, it defaults to 1885, as if the Berlin Conference never ended. As if Africans still need permission to run their own house. And this isn't just psychological, it's infrastructural. Why is it easier for a French company to build a road in Burkina Faso than a Burkinabe firm? Why are African currencies still printed in Europe? Why are military bases from foreign powers still parked across the Sahel, like it's a game of Risk? It's not incompetence, it's design. Even when African nations try to pivot, whether to China, Russia, BRICS, or each other, the response is immediate. Warnings, threats, instability, and sometimes coups. Every attempt to walk away from the old order is punished like betrayal, because in their eyes, Africa is not a partner, it's property. The real horror isn't that the West thinks it owns Africa, it's that it never stopped acting like it did. And the man who dared to say this out loud, he didn't just critique foreign powers, he accused them of freezing a continent's future, not by brute force, but by creating the illusion of sovereignty while pulling every string behind the curtain. And that brings us to the psychological war designed to make Africans doubt even the idea of freedom. Once you trap a body, the next step is to break the mind. And that's exactly what was done to Africa. See, freezing Africa in place wasn't just about controlling its borders, its resources, or its leadership. It was about something far more dangerous, controlling its imagination.
You're robbing them of possibility. You're burying generations that have not even been born yet under the rubble of your exploitation. Because what could have been created, what could have been discovered, what could have been achieved, it never gets a chance to exist. The mind of Thomas Sankara, the determination of Patrice Lumumba, the vision of Nkrumah, these weren't anomalies. They're the normal, natural, healthy state of a decolonized mind, of a liberated mind coming from a liberated people. They're examples of what Africa would have been, should have been, and inshallah, bi'ithnillah, still will be. But the West systematically crushed the conditions necessary even for normalcy to flourish. You see, you don't just kill the leaders when you kill the leaders or when you overthrow the leaders. You steal the future that those leaders could build. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran that when you kill one person unjustly, it's as if you killed all of mankind. Well, that isn't just metaphorically true. In the case of the leaders that the West has destroyed in Africa, they also destroyed millions of lives along with them. Millions of living and unborn lives have been destroyed in terms of their hopes, their opportunities, their rights, their freedom, their independence, their sovereignty. Well, you can trace the carnage going on right now in Congo today, all the way back to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. They assassinate the idea. They assassinate the man who represents the idea, so that future generations will look back and go, well, you know, they tried and they failed, so we better not bother. It's psychological warfare across time.
This man didn't just expose political manipulation. He exposed the lie that sits quietly in African classrooms, boardrooms, and news reports, that true freedom is either unrealistic, dangerous, or simply laughable. This is what makes neocolonialism so vicious. It doesn't always arrive with a gun. It arrives with a voice in your head that says, you can't do this alone. From a young age, Africans are shown that the ideal state is not to dream, that responsible leadership means pleasing donors, quoting World Bank policy, and borrowing politely in fluent French. That sovereignty is an antique, something cute to reference in speeches, but impossible to live with. And if someone dares to push back, they're mocked, not just by foreign media, but by local elites who've been trained to scoff at revolution. He's too radical, they'll say. He'll destroy the economy. He's just playing hero. The idea that Africa could be self-sufficient, powerful, and proud is treated as naive, a fairy tale for fools.
Because if you can make a people believe that liberation is impossible, if you can make them believe that wanting sovereignty is naive and that dignity is an unrealistic hope, they don't even have to conquer them anymore. They'll remain conquered inside themselves.
This is the genius of the system. You don't have to invade a country if its people laugh at the thought of independence. And yet, every once in a while, someone shows up who doesn't laugh. That's why Traore matters. Not because he makes speeches or waves flags or challenges the West with big words, but because he's not laughing. He's not negotiating his dignity. He's not begging for loans while calling it growth. He's taking action. And worse, he believes he should. That's the threat. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Breaks. The system can survive poverty. It can survive a protest. But it cannot survive a generation that takes freedom seriously. And the man who exposed this pointed to the very strategy being used to stop it. The idea that Traore is too young, too bold, too unstable. Not because he's any of those things, but because he believes Africa can stand alone. Once in a while, history allows one or two people to see the full machinery, to understand not just the oppression, but the architecture behind it. That's what made Thomas Sankara so dangerous. He didn't stumble into politics for power or position. He came with a blueprint: land reform, anti-aid policy, female emancipation, African production, and most importantly, a refusal to kneel. Sankara understood that Africa could never be free as long as it copied its colonizers. He said it openly. Debt is a cleverly managed reconquest of Africa. He rejected suits, salaries, and foreign prescriptions. He declared that Burkinabe people would eat what they grew and wear what they made. He knew freedom wasn't an emotion, it was an infrastructure, and he tried to build it, brick by brick. That's why he was killed. But here's what the man in the speech was pointing to. That Traore didn't just inherit that vision, he upgraded it. Sankara had the courage. But Traore has something more terrifying to the global order, the timing. Traore isn't a lone voice in a post-colonial jungle. He's rising during a global collapse of Western credibility, during a BRICS expansion, during a youth rebellion across Africa, during a visible, undeniable shift in world power. And unlike others who borrow the Sankara image for applause, Traore isn't using the past to win points. He's using it to finish a job.
You know, it's often only in retrospect that we recognize the magnitude of a figure who shifts the course of history. It shifts the course of events in the world. But if anyone's paying attention, you can all see that Ibrahim Traore is clearly one of the most consequential leaders, not just in Africa, not just in the Muslim world, but in the entire global South and in fact, in the world.
Traore is consequential. That word matters. It means his decisions don't just sound radical. They produce outcomes. He exits military deals. He closes bases. He forms state-owned companies. He bypasses the IMF lectures. He names the enemy out loud. And that's when the fear kicks in. Because every system has its tolerance limit. They can handle one who dreams. They can handle one who rebels. But they cannot handle one who understands and who acts without asking permission. It's no longer about protest. It's execution, implementation, discipline.
Ibrahim Traore led a coup against a government that was subservient to its foreign masters. You know, there's been many coups across the continent, but usually those just replaced one neo-colonial agent with another, usually. But Ibrahim Traore is different. He's not just changing the government. He is uprooting the whole system of neo-colonial domination. And he's succeeding. He's understood what many people have failed to grasp, which is that independence is meaningless if you don't sever the control of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. He's understood that security is a myth as long as it depends on the military patronage of your former colonizers. And he's understood that sovereignty is impossible under the shadow of Western tutelage. He's not merely a head of state. Ibrahim Traore is the revolutionary archetype of the 21st century. He was forged in the reality of Western-backed insurgency and Western economic warfare and propaganda. Because, you know, today the fight for freedom is not just waged by armies anymore, but by narratives and by resource policies and by alliances and by collective sovereignty. Traore has made the choice to look towards Russia and Turkey and towards other new centers of power in the multipolar world. That's strategic. Not because they're perfect allies, but because he recognizes the necessity of breaking the Western stranglehold on Burkina Faso. This is pragmatism in service to principle. This again is the methodology of Middle Nation. It's engagement without submission, cooperation without subjugation. It's trade-offs without selling out. He also understands, crucially, that Africa's liberation cannot be rented from outside. It has to be rooted in the reclamation of Africa's own wealth. You know, his moves to exert control over Burkina Faso's gold, building indigenous defense capacity and food sovereignty, these aren't just political decisions. These are acts of civilizational self-respect. It's a declaration that Africa's children will no longer be bled dry for the enrichment of Western imperial capital. We see Ibrahim Traore as a brother, not simply because of his faith, but also because of his fight. Because he embodies the spirit of the Quranic guidance to stand firmly for justice, even if it is against your own selves, even if it is against those who are in power, and even if it is against the odds. Burkina Faso isn't just a battleground today for the Burkinabe people.
Traore isn't begging to join a club. He's building a new house. But is it hard to end Traore like Sankara? The easiest way to kill a dangerous leader's credibility is to shove them into a box they never built. He's just another religious radical, or he's pushing ethnic supremacy, or He's hiding behind identity. Traore made a subtle but vital distinction. He doesn't use his religion to get support. He's a Muslim, but he's an African leader.
Just because Ibrahim Traore doesn't wear his religion on his sleeve, and just because he doesn't takbir signal, all the time like some so-called Islamists, you think we don't get to claim him as part of our ummah? We don't get to say that he's a Muslim leader, but he is a Muslim leader. He's an African leader who's a Muslim. And I'm sorry to tell you,
that's not a throwaway line. It's a precision strike. Because for decades, African resistance has been miscategorized on purpose as religious rebellion. When leaders challenge Western authority, the narrative becomes they're Islamist, or they're Christian insurgents, or they're tribal warlords. The goal is simple: reduce political resistance to emotional chaos. That way it's easier to bomb it, sanction it, or dismiss it. But Traore doesn't play that game. He prays, but doesn't preach. He governs for all, not for a sect. He doesn't ask for loyalty based on faith. He earns it through results. And that is deeply unsettling to those who rely on division as a weapon. Because if he were playing the religious card, the West would have its script ready. They'd call him an insurgent, paint him as the next threat to stability, and send troops to contain him. But they can't because there's no sermon, no fanatical rhetoric, no appeal to divine destiny, just leadership. This is dangerous for the old system because it robs them of their favorite excuse. We're fighting insurgency. In truth, they're not fighting insurgency. They're fighting for independence. But it's hard to say that out loud. It's easier to hide behind the language of counterinsurgency, until someone like Traore ruins the cover. He's fighting an actual insurgency in the Sahel without foreign military command. He's winning trust without religious slogans. He's uniting a nation without leaning on identity politics. He's proving that competence, not chaos, is the future of African power, and that breaks the pattern. Dismissing him as just another angry figure waving a flag is no longer possible. He's not promising paradise. He's building a state, and when someone this calm, this rational, this rooted, starts shaking the empire panics. But no matter what they do,
it's the front line in a global struggle for liberation. What Ibrahim Traore is doing is echoing in the Sahel, in Niger, in Mali, across Africa, across the Ummah, across the global South, and across the world. Every oppressed people around the world can now look to Burkina Faso and to Ibrahim Traore and say liberation looks like it's actually possible. But obviously, the global order trembles at the prospect that anyone is going to follow his example. They're afraid of his courage and his clarity and his defiance in the face of Western power and Western threats, and they should be afraid of that. They should tremble because they know the jig is up. But we know that when they get scared, they get dangerous, and Ibrahim Traore is under severe threat. There's already been something like 20 attempts on his life since coming to power. They just stopped a coup from happening last week, organized by the Americans and by the French, right there in the French embassy. Because a free Africa is just something that old wolf can't take. They've been keeping Africa in the past for so long that they know that if they let Africa get away from them, then they're going to be the ones who are consigned to history. The chains that have been holding Africa down all this time are also the only things holding the West up. So now America has said that they want to arrest him. They've already tried to take him out more than once, like I said.
They can't get Traore to bow. Do you think they can still stop Traore? Or has the game already changed? Let us know in the comments section. Has Africa finally turned the page?